You're listening to In Sickness, a podcast about caregiving with Allison Breininger and Justin Bima.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are things in your part of the world?
Things are doing okay. It's been a little bit of a hectic week. We're on the front edge of a heat wave.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's supposed to get up to 110 on Monday. So
crazy.
Not looking forward to that.
Last time we talked, we were having a heat wave in Minnesota.
Yeah. So
and you were like, it's 67 here.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. It's what we do in Minnesota. So
right.
We're just such caring, sharing people.
Yeah. So this last weekend was Father's Day.
Yeah.
Which is not a great holiday for me, given that due to Sarah and I's situation with her illness and all of that, that's impacted our ability to have kids, have a family, for me to be a father.
Yeah.
And so that's not, it ebbs and flows year to year as far as like how much it kind of hits.
Yeah.
But one thing I noticed this year is it seems like society-wise, like around Mother's Day, people have gotten a lot more sensitive to people who that's a hard day for.
Yeah.
Whether it's because they've lost children, can't have children. There's a lot more kind of, I'm trying to think of the right word there.
Sensitivity, maybe?
Sensitivity, yeah, around that.
Yeah.
And there's very little of that around Father's Day.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because I had noticed that. I feel like the last couple of years for Mother's Day, you almost don't even see people doing the posts about like, my mom's the greatest anymore, because there's so much about like, keep in mind the people who lost their mom, lost their child, don't have children, are in the middle of infertility, all those things. And I have wondered that so quickly about Father's Day, though, is that I noticed that there was like a couple, like I saw a couple of the same sort of like little artwork things about remembering fathers or men who, don't have a good relationship with their father, right? But way less for mothers. And it made me wonder, because I feel like there's been this shift. I'd love to like do a sociological study of this, but a shift over the decades of before everybody just said like having children's the best. And then in the last however many years, it's become a thing to say like parenting is hard. Or losing a parent is hard. All of those things have come into the light. Right. And we're seeing that on Mother's Day.
Yeah.
We're not seeing it on Father's Day. And we're not seeing it about caregiving.
Right.
And I wonder, like, what needs to happen to sort of bring those two categories into the same space where motherhood has come. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, for sure. And kind of what I was thinking about with it is, there's not this sort of visibility around the grief and difficulty for this group of men on Father's Day, or, anyone who maybe has lost a father or anything like that. And then also, like, if you look online and you're seeing people who are caregivers, the vast majority of those people are women.
Yeah.
That you see, like, that's what you see. That's, and I think I saw like 40% of family caregivers are men. And so it's like this huge, like, unseen group of people. And as a man who is a caregiver, like, there's, due to like how we've been conditioned socially, like that's a difficult thing. And
absolutely,
I think that at some point that would be I think a good thing to kind of dive into.
I would love that. Yeah. Absolutely. Because I think, we talk about like caregiving's unseen, and then spousal caregiving is really unseen, and then being youngish.
Yeah.
And then being a man, like your little circle just keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller, which is one of the many reasons I'm so glad that you are willing to talk about your experience, because you're not the only one.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of us.
There's a lot of you. There's just a lot of also reasons why maybe people aren't sharing or don't feel comfortable or don't have the space to share. Yeah. We should dig into that. Yeah. For sure.
Well, I'll be thinking on that, and we'll come back to that.
Yeah. I would love that.
So how has your week been going then?
Well, we are going on a trip.
You're going on a trip?
Yeah. Like, we're leaving the house. We're leaving the state.
Oh, wow.
I know. It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
We are leaving tomorrow, and we are driving to Michigan, to the Upper Peninsula, to see my brother's family, and then to Indiana to our hometown, where Sean's family is. And so it's a big deal.
It's a very big deal.
We used to make trips like this at least once a year
Mm-hmm.
to especially go to Indiana to see the family. But it's been a number of years. Actually, Sean was in our hometown, like literally on like March 12th, 2020.
Right. I remember that.
And when he flew back, and because I remember I like sent him with all these masks before masks were cool.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, you will wear these masks on the airplane. And I don't care what people think. So that's the last time he's been there. I haven't been there in a number of years. We, the three of us took a little tiny trip up north at some point during the pandemic, but this is a big one.
Right.
And so, as you can imagine, it's a big deal for a lot of reasons, but being a caregiver adds a whole bunch of extra layers.
Right.
So I was wondering if you wanted to talk today about that kind of stuff, because it's, packing for a trip for 9 days is a lot in any family.
For sure.
And when you're a caregiver, there's a whole lot more to process.
Yeah. Taking caregiving on the road. That's...
Yeah. I think we just came up with our title. Remember,
hey, there you go.
Later.
I will.
Taking caregiving on the road. I love it. Yeah. So just to peek into kind of what this weeks have been in preparation for this trip. So Sean has a PICC line, and because he gets IV fluids once a day.
Right.
And so because he has a PICC line, once a week, a home health nurse comes into our house, changes the dressing, draws labs, takes his vitals, that kind of thing. Once a week, we get an order of medical supplies, all the syringes and lab kits, and then these super cool hydraulic pumps that are the IV things, and then attached to his arm, and then he does that once a day. So we're going to be gone longer than 7 days.
Right.
And the nurse comes on Tuesday.
Right.
And so it took a team of people to figure out how to make this work. In the past, when we've just gone like a few hours away in Minnesota, they've just said, like, we've got nurses all across the state. We'll just come to you.
Right.
That's not the case when we're going somewhere else. And so what we've had to figure out is like a different nurse is coming to our house 10 minutes before we leave, get in the car tomorrow. So she's going to like change the dressing right before we leave. And then they want me to watch to learn how to do it in case there's an emergency.
Right.
And then they gave us an emergency kit to take along with us. And then...
Is that something you feel comfortable doing, or is that a stressful prospect? That's
a good question. In the past, I've been surprised because we've asked before if I could just get trained to do it. But because the PICC line goes straight to his heart. Yeah. Kind of a big deal. So they have said I could not be trained in it. I don't think it's all that complicated. And that doesn't really make me nervous necessarily. But I don't really love thinking about, you could be on a trip and he could fall in the lake and then you would need to. And so they just kept saying, so then you would just go and find an infusion center nearby. And then like, oh, okay. Yeah. Find an infusion center.
So you're frantically, you're out Googling for the nearest
right?
infusion center ahead of time to find.
Right. Yeah. I have done that in the past. I haven't done that yet this time, but which probably will jinx us, right?
No.
No, that's not how that works.
Nope.
Although sometimes it feels like that's how it works. So I'm going to watch to learn just in case. And then he'll go over like a day or two, the dressing change. Like 7-day thing. And then the morning after we get back, someone will come.
Right.
And then the same thing with the pumps. Like they're sending the pumps today because they're only good for 9 days.
Right.
And he'll have to go 1 day with it, like all this stuff. And then the prescriptions, like all of the pieces. So when people are like, are you ready for your trip? I'm like, well, I haven't thought about like what I need. But I have thought a lot about all the medical stuff that has to happen.
Right.
So it's been a lot. It's been a lot of phone calls, like like I said, like literally a team of people on the backs end has been trying to figure this all out for us. So I think we have that all figured out, but that doesn't then cover like what happens if anything happens while we're gone.
Right.
Because this is going to be a lot of traveling, a lot of togetherness with a lot of people. And we have been living pretty like low key lifestyle for however many months now.
Yeah.
And so I worry a little bit about that as well.
Worry about like the exposure being around other people, or just you haven't been around people for that long and it's just, that's an adjustment, like just socially.
Yeah, good question. I think it's not so much because the three of us are fully vaccinated and we know he has antibodies.
Right.
It's not so much like a COVID concern at this moment. It's more just, like taking a long walk around the block can do him in.
Right. For sure.
And if that happens and he goes to bed for 3 hours, it's not a big deal because we're here.
Yeah.
But it's like if we're on a trip and then he's going to be doing it, there's going to be a lot more activity.
Right.
Certainly we're going to be with family members the whole time. And so I'm sure people would be fine if he has to go to bed for 4 hours, right?
Right.
But I just think it's going to take a lot of stamina, even for me, a perfectly healthy person.
Yeah, I see.
Because we're out of practice. And especially I think for him, it's going to be a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think about like also, you and I talked one time about like parties and stuff like that. And about like what we carry around when we're like at a party with our person. And then we're sort of watching the whole time. And I feel like that's what vacation will also be.
Yeah. And so then it becomes less of, that takes away from your ability to have a like vacation in the traditional, like a vacation is a break from life.
Right.
It's all of the responsibilities that you have day in and day out with a heightened sense of, or off your normal routine and without some of your traditional support around.
Yeah.
So that's a lot to manage.
It is. Because I think too, like I'm always on alert.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, but here we know, like, okay, we know where the ER is. It's 18 minutes from here. This is how that goes. Here's where the doctor is. So just being in a different space feels like a lot.
Yeah.
And then sort of also manage, like watching, because I also know he's going to like push himself and be like, no, I want to keep going. And managing the like, oh, but if you do, what's going to happen later? Kind of thing. Yeah. It's a lot of, we haven't seen a lot of these relatives in a long, long time now because of COVID.
Right.
And so that's a whole other piece. And hopefully they will all be sensitive to his needs and to my needs as the caregiver and all the things. But it's a lot is the phrase I just keep coming back to.
Right, for sure. Yeah, I have a little bit different situation coming up at the end of the month. So I'm going to be going along with my family on a camping trip at the end of the July. And so I'll be gone for 2.5 days or so.
Okay.
And Sarah's not going.
Oh.
For, I think, obvious reasons. That's would be too much for her. So for me, it's like lining up all of the things that I do and making sure that whether it's her or her parents, like all of the things are covered.
Yeah.
Because, well, I just already, like my natural inclination is just to like do everything myself.
Yeah.
And I'm not great at delegating. I'm not great at like sharing that load.
Yeah.
And so suddenly this is kind of like a forced.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, now I got to figure this out.
Yeah.
And so Sarah has done her own infusions before.
Okay.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
So we're working on making sure that, over the next couple weeks that she feels comfortable doing that.
How is that daily? Is it multiple times? How frequent?
Yeah, it's so in the summer she does twice a day, 4 days of the week, and she does 3 infusions 3 days in the week.
Oh wow.
And so she'll do a couple of those like back to back.
Okay.
But it's, at least hooking and unhooking twice a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I can do some stuff to prepare some of the infusions and have kind of some of that ready so she doesn't have to do as much work going into it. So there's that piece. We have a dog now.
Right.
That it's been my responsibility to take the dog out, take the dog on walks, all of that. And so Sarah's parents are going to be doing that. And I'm less concerned about that. I feel they've already do that when we have to go, to a family thing or something like that.
Right. Right. Because you live with Sarah's parents, so they're right there in the house.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Which, if that were not the case, I would not be feasible, I don't think, for me to be going on this trip. So, so I'm kind of envisioning that, yes, I'll be there. Yes, it'll be great to have a vacation. I'm really looking forward to spending all that time with my nieces and nephew. Like, that's going to be good, solid time there. But like in the back of my mind is always going to be like, how are things going with Sarah?
For sure.
How is everything going at home? Is everything being covered? And it's just kind of, I imagine it's going to be hard to kind of let go of that control of everything.
Do you think like when your in-laws see, like if you're going to show them or like, delegate some of those things.
Yeah.
Do you think that they see any of that and are like, oh man, what? You do all of this? Or do you think that they're pretty aware because they're in the house of like all that you do on a daily basis?
Yeah, I think they're very much they're on the side of they're aware of all that I do, and I think that's one of the reasons why they want me to be able to get away and do this,
Mm-hmm.
and to allow me to have a little bit of a break,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I very much appreciate.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Do you think you would ever like, so if between them and then Sarah learns how to do the infusions, do you imagine that when you come back, like that any of that is sustainable and could continue to be done by other people so that it's not all on your shoulders?
Yeah, that's I hadn't what I had considered is that this is kind of a sort of a trial run for me being away. And I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't been away since I think maybe late 2019. I
Right.
was away for a couple days.
Yep.
And then, I mean, there was the pandemic, so there wasn't really
Right.
an option there.
Yeah.
But yeah, if this goes well, which I mean, honestly, I don't see any reason why it won't.
Right. Yep.
I mean, that doesn't mean I'm not going to be anxious and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it will help me feel better about, okay, maybe, then I can plan something and kind of have my own little vacation to get away, on my own and
Yeah.
kind of have a real like recharge kind of thing and feel
Yeah.
better. And like that's more on the table as an option. But yeah, thinking about it just as a day in and day out for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Cause that would be just,
Right.
really good.
So that if it doesn't have to be like 100% or 0%,
Yeah.
right? Either you do everything or you leave town and do nothing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is there a middle place?
Yeah. And I
Like,
hadn't thought about that.
like she could do, like if she knows how, she could do her infusions on these once a day, or they
Mm-hmm.
could take the dog for a walk this many times. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, how does that feel to even think about that?
I mean, it feels like we talk about the backpack a lot.
Yeah.
It feels
Yeah.
like kind of a little bit, maybe not completely removing one of the boulders, but someone's kind of
Yeah.
lifting one up a little bit. I mean, there's like a
Yeah.
lightning kind of feeling with that.
Huh. Would you feel any guilt or anything like that of like, well, I'm here, so maybe I should just do it? Or do you think you would be able to release that and be like, hey, can we divvy this up a little bit even when I am here?
Yeah, I could see a little bit of that just because I know that, I've been doing all of the things for so long.
Yep.
And like I know how everything should be done, or
Yep.
I mean, there's the way that I do it, and
Yeah.
things can be done differently. That's not necessarily
Right.
the way that things need to be done.
Yep.
But there's so much momentum over years and years and years,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I think it would and will take time to feel 100% at ease with me not doing all of the things.
Yeah. So it sounds like, tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like it's less about like guilt in asking your in-laws or Sarah to
Mhm.
do something, and a little more of fear or control of like, but I do it this way. And so are they going to do it the right way?
Mhm.
Is that accurate? Or
That and just not, I think just the anxiety about not knowing how things are being done or things are going.
Yeah.
If something goes wrong, I'm not there.
yeah.
It's just that internally letting go, and because I trust everyone that,
For sure.
everything's going to be
For sure.
fine.
Yeah.
But it's hard to leave your person
Yeah.
when like you do all of the things to
Yeah.
care for
Yes.
them day in and day out. And
Yes.
I think that I will be leaving part of myself here, kind of in a sense,
Yeah.
or part of my, like mentally, part of me will be here.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's kind of takes away a little bit from like a
Right.
vacation, which
Yeah.
I'm,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah. I wonder for 2.5 days, it'll be interesting to see, like, is that enough?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is that just enough? You know what I mean? It'll be interesting to see how that time period feels, the 2.5 days. And if that feels like long enough to like get into the groove and relax, or
Mm-hmm.
if by the end you'll be like, I've been way too long, I have to go back, or, and like you said, you're going to come back recharged. But if you're leaving part of yourself and part of your brain,
Mm-hmm.
will be still there,
Right.
like, will that recharging happen?
Mm-hmm. 2.5 days kind of feels right on the cusp of like maybe not quite long enough to fully like
Yeah.
relax, but also like short enough that like it's gonna be on my mind the whole time.
For
kind
sure.
of. Yeah.
How far geographically will you be from home?
About 3.5 hours.
Okay.
Um, The last time I went along with my family camping, I think it was maybe like an hour, hour and a half
Okay.
away.
Yeah.
So that felt a lot different because if
Yeah.
something were to go wrong or if
Yep.
something, I could be home very quickly. This is,
Yep.
yeah, that certainly plays into it. That
Yeah.
granted, 3.5 hours isn't that long, but it's not
Yeah.
like I can just pop over
Right.
for part of a day if I needed to.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's a story that I hope helps and doesn't stress you out.
Okay. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Was it 2 years ago now? I don't know. A couple years ago, I had this amazing opportunity to go to Boston to do this like filming thing with Iana Care.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you haven't heard of Iana Care, everyone listening, you got to look it up right now because it's the most amazing caregiver app ever. So I had this opportunity to go to Boston.
Mhm.
And at the same time, before I knew I was going to go to Boston, our family was going to go to Indiana to celebrate Sean's dad's retirement.
Okay.
When I had the opportunity to go to Boston, they said, of course, you should go there.
Mhm.
And so Sean and Maya, and then Sean's brother, who lives here too, they went to Indiana.
Mhm.
I went to Boston.
Right.
And I was like, everything's going to be fine. Like, he's going to be with his brother and his family and all the things.
Mhm.
So then I flew home from Boston. They were supposed to fly home from Indiana that day. And his brother called and said, Sean woke up very, very sick.
Hmm.
And I think I should take him in. So then I'm texting it like, what are the symptoms?
Mhm.
I think you should take him in. They took him into the ER. They ended up admitting him to the hospital. They missed their flight, all the things. So I'm
Yeah.
back here at home in Minnesota. He's in the hospital
Right.
in Indiana,
Yeah.
like not even our hospital.
Mhm.
And I'm not there.
Right.
So then it goes into this whole like, do I get on a plane? Do I get in
Right.
a car? Like, what do we do?
Mhm.
But the amazing thing that happened is that his brother did it. His brother
Right.
stepped up. His brother lives here. He was his bone marrow donor. He's a huge part of our lives.
Mhm.
He's seen me do it a million times.
Yeah.
And, so I was in like constant contact with his brother to like make sure they look for this and make sure they see this and da, da, da. But it was an interesting thing to be like, oh, he's got it. Like it's his turn. Like I've been doing every ER visit and hospitalization for 11 years.
Right.
And Adam's got this one.
Mhm.
And certainly at the end, Adam had like a much more deeper appreciation for me and my role even than he had before. And in the end, like Sean was released and they got on a new plane ticket and they came home and everything was fine. And I'm not saying that it was easy. It was terrible.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And it was a little bit like back to what we talked about delegating. It was a little bit of like, somebody else can do this too.
Right.
And everybody ended up okay.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. That's kind of what I'm hoping I feel at the end of this.
Yeah.
Is that, it's things still work out if I'm not the one doing everything. Think
about, can we just pause for a second about that sentence?
Yeah.
Can you say that sentence again? Do you remember what you said?
Did I say that things will still be okay if I'm not the one doing all the things? Is that what I said?
Yeah. I think you and I need some tattoos that say that.
There we go.
Matching tattoos.
I wish it didn't take something like this to like end up feeling that way.
Agreed.
That could just be something that felt normal and part of day in and day out.
Right. Why do you think it isn't?
I think there's a lot of reasons. I think one of them is like because it's Sarah, because she's my spouse, because there's that closeness there. And the momentum of being the one doing it for so long.
Yeah.
That after like all of that for years and years and years, it's just hard to relinquish those responsibilities and know that it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I think about that and I wonder like if you and I wrote down like all the things we did and do, if there are things that we could be like, oh, actually, I could delegate that one. I could delegate that one. And I wonder, like, part of it in my head is a little bit of like guilt. Like, well, do I really need to delegate it? Like, I could probably, I've been doing it all these years. I could probably keep doing it. I think I also think about like, I don't want Sean to feel like a burden.
Right.
Like, I don't want him to feel like he's so much work that I have to ask somebody else to come in to help. And then I think there's the piece too of like, are they going to mess it up? But I think in my situation too, it's interesting because there have been lots of times over the 11 years that I've been a caregiver that Sean has not been in a space physically, mentally, emotionally, to energetically to do some things for himself.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But then we do have seasons where he can.
Right.
Right. And so it's interesting because there are things like I schedule all the appointments and I talk to all the, like every week when the home health nurse comes and when I, and the prescriptions. And sometimes I'm like, wait, why am I doing this?
Right.
Because at this exact moment, he could do it.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of moments in the last 11 years where he couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I took it on and then just stuck with it.
Yeah.
And even like when I think about his PICC line, he could have like this extra, like an extender added onto it so that he could hook it up himself.
Right.
But when they first did it, I was like, well, he doesn't need the extender. I can just always do it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was listening to you talk about how like Sarah's going to learn how to do her infusions, I was like, like, why exactly do we do that? Like, it'd probably be easier for all of us if he could just do it himself.
Yeah.
And I could certainly still do it if I needed to and whatever. But like, why do we jump to the like, well, I'll do it. I'm the caregiver. I'll just do it.
Right.
Like, why do we jump there? Instead of like, oh, well, maybe they could. I mean, I know I'll speak for myself that I feel like I'm always trying to make his life as easy as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And his life would maybe be easier if I had a little more balance. If I had if I was maybe a little less stressed, that'd probably make his life better too, Right.
That's a perspective that I think that's not one the perspective that I take often. It's usually it will just be easier for me to do it.
Yeah.
Rather than, that if have more balance, then that's easier for Sarah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
A better living environment for her if you're less stressed.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, I mean, it would be interesting. I keep trying to convince the two of them, Sarah and Sean, to do their own episode.
Right.
I think it would be so cool to hear their perspective. But I wonder what that would feel like for her if it would have some feeling of autonomy and independence to be able to be like, I can do my infusion.
Yeah, I know. I think it would absolutely. I think it definitely would.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't this fascinating? It's like we're all doing this thing that, like, she would feel better because she'd have autonomy. You'd feel better because you'd be less stressed. Then she'd feel better because you'd be less. You know what I mean? And like, wait a minute. Why are we stuck in some of these ruts?
I mean, part of it is I think a lot of the time she doesn't necessarily have the energy or all of that to be able to manage that.
Good point.
And that's why this is how it's been going. I mean, like you said with Sean, there are times when she is more able, but those are short. I don't know. It's like, it's very much, there can be day-to-day variation. And it's like, she may be good in one day and the next day, completely out. And so it's hard to build up any, I don't know, routine around that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because for you guys, it's pretty new to potentially even think about this, right? I mean, before her new med,
think about what?
That she could take over some of those things, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm.
So that's maybe part of it too, is that like this wasn't even an option to even consider for a long time, right?
Right. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. But yeah, with her new medication, she's in a very different place than she was a year ago, 2 years ago. Yeah.
And that's where I sort of sometimes like wake up a little bit too and be like, wait a minute, like I took on all of these things at times when he couldn't, but now he can.
Right.
And then part of my brain says, well, but I'm sure there'll be another stage where he can't again. Maybe I should just keep doing it. But I do think that I don't want to speak for either of them. I will guess that there might be a feeling of autonomy to be able to be like, no, I got this. Like I can do this task, and so I just wonder about that for both of us. If there are things that we could say like, you can do it. And if you can't, I'm right here.
Right.
But to spread that out a little bit, maybe.
No, I think that's something good to think about. Yeah. So back to what we were talking about with trips, vacation, getting away. So you're going to be gone for 9 days. Yeah. And those are going to be a like intense 9 days for a lot of reasons.
Yep.
How are you feeling about like getting back from that and then like life starts right back up again? Like I imagine, yes, you'll have some like vacationness as part of this, but due to caregiving and all of that, like this is also going to be like an energy draining kind of
Agreed.
thing to some extent.
Oh, for sure. I think, and mostly because we're just gonna be around a lot of people. Like that's
Right.
the trip. The point of the trip is to see family.
Yeah.
So it's not just like lying on a beach and reading a book. It's like family togetherness, which will be great.
Yes.
And will be a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, fortunately, because it's summer, you know, like Maya's done with school. She doesn't have anything going on.
Right.
I am fortunately going to take some time off after we get back.
Oh, that's smart.
And so all that hangover stuff you and I always talk about, I will have some time here to be in my hangover mode, right?
Yeah, this is like an appointment hangover times 10, maybe a little bit.
Oh my gosh, I know. Oh, don't even. I know. It's true. It's true. So fortunately, the way it worked out is I will be able to take days off after as well. And the nice thing is when we're home, if he's crashed, I mean, he can just sleep all day.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so that feels, as long as it doesn't sort of tip over into like a more serious thing. If it's just like burnout, like I feel like we can all just come home, hunker back down in our house where we're used to hunkering and just all be burnt out together.
Right.
You know, it's just more about the like tipping over into something more.
Yeah.
Like I this morning went and got all the like airborne immune gummies and stuff, you know, what I mean? Just to be like, you know, let's all just take as good care of ourselves as we can for these 9 days. Well, we'll be around a lot of people and we'll be traveling and we'll be sleeping weird and all the things. So yeah, I think there's that. And so I'm fortunate that that's the way it's going to be when we get back. For you, with your 2.5 days, like, because I wonder, even though you're going on quote vacation, like you will probably, do you have time built in to like decompress when you get back?
I do. I am planning on taking the day after I get back off as well. I think that's a good strategy.
Yeah.
Even if, I mean, I think that's a good thing, even if like Sarah wasn't sick and all of that, like just not going from vacation right back into life, like having that space, that's kind of nice.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think it's going to feel, and there's going to be it's going to feel very easy to just drop right back into life life hasn't changed, but into the routine, into the normal day to day. Yeah. And so I'm hoping that at least not having work that day, that I can have at least some kind of, okay, let's transition a little bit. From one to the other and kind of appreciate how things, were taken care of while I was gone.
Yeah.
And things don't have to flip completely off to completely on either.
Yeah. That's what I'm excited for you to think about. It'll be fun when we come back. Wait, when is your trip?
It's the last week of July.
Okay. So we've got a little while, but
yeah,
I'll be interested to hear like if you can find some ways to not make it a flip switch, switch flip. You know what I mean? That you come back and that you can be like, oh, you've been doing this task. Great. Are you okay just continuing to do that? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, for sure.
Because that could be a game changer. I mean, when I think about like when I mentioned the IanaCare app earlier, and I use that app to ask people in my community for things like meals, like lawn mowing, like rides.
Yeah.
And I always say, because I want to do the medical stuff, like I want to do the caregiving stuff, but I want other people to take the other things off my plate. But it makes me wonder, why do I do all the medical stuff? And do I have to do all the medical stuff?
Right.
And could there be a shift there as well? You know? Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I mean, with our situation, like if it was just the two of us living on our own, there would be a lot of things that I would want to be delegating. But given that we live with her parents, like, I don't have to worry about yard work.
Right.
Like, that's something that Sarah's dad
That's
does.
awesome.
And so there's all of these, like the things that go with like having a home that you live in that is spread out with more people. And so just as part of our living situation, a lot of those general stuff that's spread out now, I've still taken on all the medical stuff. And I mean, I was doing all that before we moved in here. And so that momentum has kind of just kept on going.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I'll be interested to see what that might look like for you to delegate a little bit.
Yeah.
It's making me wonder too, when I think about my upcoming trip, because we have been so hunkered down.
Right.
And just being around other people, we've talked a couple times about like, sometimes people have different opinions about how we're caregiving or about how our person should be, whatever. And I mean, we're going to be with all family members, so I'm sure it'll be great.
Yeah.
But I think that, there's always a chance that people who haven't been around us in a couple of years might have opinions.
Right.
Might have opinions about how we've spent the last 15 months or about, any of those things. And so there's that to look forward to as well.
Right.
Yeah. The other thing this is making me remember when Sean had his bone marrow transplant, which is just really like, in my opinion, the worst possible thing that can happen to a body.
Yeah.
So it was awful. And my mom, that was before my parents lived here. My mom came and just moved in with us for a couple of months.
Right.
And there was a time, and I was working full time and I was so tired. And I remember coming home from work one day and saying, I just want to go to the place where like Oprah sends people, like a ranch with like, there's like horses and like spots. Like, I just want to go there. And I was so tired and I went to bed. And apparently after I went to bed, that Sean and my mom looked at each other and were like, oh no, this is no good. Like we have, like, she can't go down.
Right.
Which that's a side note. I hate that because like, that's a lot of pressure. Right.
It's an enormous amount of pressure.
But anyway, they were like, she doesn't look so good. We got to do something. So apparently they like started Googling all the things. And I woke up the next morning and the two of them were standing there and they were like, we found a spa and it's 20 minutes away and we booked it for you. And we booked like treatments and a hotel room and all the things. And our only question is, do you want to go for 1 night or 2 nights? And I was like, 2 nights. Yeah. 2 nights. And they're like, okay, well, we just didn't know if you would be comfortable, like being away from Maya and being away from Sean. I was like, 2 nights. And I mean, it was amazing. And they know me well enough that they knew that that was something that I would, like that would not work for everybody. Right. But the nice thing was it was in Minneapolis. It was just like 20 minutes away.
Right.
So I didn't feel this like, oh man, like I'm an airplane ride away.
Yeah.
But it was this amazing, like just disconnect, like moment of just like.
What an incredible thing for them to do for you.
I know. And the funny thing is in the middle of it, Maya got something, pink eye. I don't know. Something happened with Maya in the middle of it and they did not tell me. And like, even when we talked, they were like, everyone's fine. And then I found out later that they had to like take her to the pediatrician and all the stuff and did not tell me. So, but again, that feels to me very much like flip the switch off, flip the switch on. Right. And it was amazing. And I feel like I came back a little bit recharged. And we can't always just wait for this, like the magical spa fairy to come. Right. We have to figure out how to like, can we do a little bit of that in our daily life? Although I'm not going to complain if anybody wants to send me to a spa.
Right.
Side note.
It reminds me when we talked about like finding those like micro moments.
Yes.
To like have just a space, a brief time for ourselves.
For sure.
The days. And yeah, I think there is something to finding that balance to where it so often feels like it's either all or nothing.
Right.
And to find some of that in the middle somewhere.
Yeah. One last question I have for you. Well, I can't promise it'll be my last, but is like, how does Sarah feel about, because I know that you both love your nieces and your nephew, and it's a huge part of your life.
Yeah.
How does it feel for her that you're about to get to spend 2.5 days with them and she's not?
Yeah. I think it's hard.
Yeah.
I think that also, and it's less this way now because with her new medication, like she's able to go to like family things. So like one of my nieces is having a birthday party tomorrow and, we're both going to be able to go.
Good.
But like for something like this, I'm kind of going as us, if that makes sense.
Oh, you're the representative.
I'm kind of like somewhat her proxy. I'm kind of like I'm representing us. Yeah. And so she's glad that I can go because then it through me, like the nieces stay connected to us.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, by making memories with me, that kind of connects them to Sarah as well.
Yeah.
And so I think for her, it's a little bit of both there. Like I know that she wishes she could spend more time with them.
Yeah.
But the fact that one of us can still allows there to be some of that connection.
For sure. Yeah. I just wonder what that must feel like. I'm glad that she can do more things, but to be like you said earlier, like obviously for obvious reasons, she can't go on a camping trip.
Right.
So what it feels like to sort of be like the one left behind, when everybody else in the family's off getting to do a thing and she isn't able to.
Right.
Yeah. Glad she's got Mosey the dog.
Right. Yes. Mosey has been glued to her these past weeks and it's great. She loves it.
Oh, good. Good. Well, I love that. So the next time we check back in, I will have been on my trip and can report back and you will still be a few weeks out from yours, I think. But, I think it's interesting that we started talking about trips, but I think we uncovered a lot of other things today.
We certainly did.
Yeah. It's a lot to think about. Good. Like I'm just thinking like we should get that extender thing.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Yeah. Thanks for talking.
Yeah. Thanks.
It's funny because in all this like preparation for the trip, I did have a moment of like, oh, I don't know if I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
Just like one more thing on the day before the trip, but I'm really, really glad because it was good to process this in the pre-trip time, and I'll report back next time we're together and let you know how it goes.
All right. Sounds great.
Yeah. All right. I'll see you later.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. You've been listening to In Sickness. Find us online at insickness.care or on Instagram at insicknesspodcast. You can send your questions and comments to insicknesspodcast@gmail.com. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend or fellow caregiver, or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening, and take care.